I came across something that I think you will find hilarious, and it involves a show that I've been watching on Showtime for the past, what, 4, 5, 6 years? So this show is called Billions, and as the name describes, it involves billionaires making loads of money, sometimes illegally, and, other people trying to stop them from doing so. But in this one scene, one person is hired to essentially hack a few devices with a computer that has a few problems with it. So I'm going to show you again a screenshot of that PC build, okay? And we're going to play a game called How Many Things Are Wrong with This Image. I think, again, you'll find it pretty hilarious, and I have no idea how this was approved. Stay with me. To get rid of that annoying Windows activation watermark, head on over to VIP SCD Key and purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for a sweet discount. So let's jump straight into this thing. I was watching this with my wife, and I immediately paused. And she'll tell you this, I paused it and I was like, wow, this is an ugly shot. I have no idea how this was approved as a hacker PC, essentially. Because first off, cable management is just grotesque. They took no effort at all to wire anything. And for that matter, there are several vital components here that are not wired at all. So first we've got this 24 pin at the top, which you need for any motherboard, right? Any modern motherboard. This is a modern board. It's an AM4 board, and it's not even receiving power like at all. For some reason, they connected the USB 3.0 cable, but they didn't bother connecting the vital 24 pin right next to it. I don't know how this slipped through. And then we've got the 8-pin EPS down here at the bottom left, which is usually up top in normal orientations. This is for CPU power, and there's clearly nothing connected here. But not to worry, there's no CPU at all. So maybe that's why they didn't connect it. I don't know how. This is to me the biggest sin of them all. How you fail to include a CPU in a hacker's PC. Maybe this guy is just such a good hacker that he can use one that I don't know, is virtual. It's totally virtual. It doesn't need to exist. Now, personally, if I was tasked with setting up this scene, all right, the build has to look super clean, for one, because that conveys that the person in charge of the hacking is very organized. He or she knows how to do things efficiently, effectively, and, in a crafty sort of way. So the fact that cable management is so bad to begin with, it just totally discredits the guy that they bring in here to do the hacking. But I would wager that if you had a CPU in the socket, and a CPU cooler on top of that, maybe like a top flow cooler, and you don't even have to show brand names. They did. I mean, you can see this is an Asus Tough Gaming motherboard. You got some Corsair memory, which we'll talk about in a second, up top there. But, you could just show a top flow cooler with the fan spinning so that we could see it from this angle. That would look so clean, but they didn't even bother. Now, as for the RAM, higher up here, this is something that I'll admit I missed the first time that I saw this. But several of you pointed it out on Twitter, and I'm so glad you did because this is hilarious. So there are two sticks, obviously from Corsair. This looks like Vengeance LPX memory, but one of the sticks, is somehow turned upside down, and they still managed to kind of sort of slot it into place, or at least where it can kind of hold itself there. I have no idea how they did. How they did that. It looks like the bottom DIMM is the one that's not oriented correctly. Let me check. I actually have this memory. Yeah, exact same kit of memory. I have two sticks here, and actually I have a similar motherboard. This one has a memory issue, which is why it's got some tape here. But you can see a similar motherboard to the one they use, and if we orient it the way that they have it in the video, something like this here, then you'll notice that the notch is off to the right. So the Corsair branding should actually be, the logo should be facing correctly, should be facing down so that we can read it without it being upside down in the shot. Which means that actually the top DIMM is the one that they somehow inserted incorrectly. And as a result of that, that means there's even more wrong with this image than I initially thought. So the bottom DIMM is slotted in correctly, but it's not actually slotted in all the way, because you can still see on the left side here, it looks like this little tab is not it's not pushed all the way in, basically. So that means that the DIMM is not fully slotted into the socket, which means that whoever installed this memory, first off, they did it backwards, and then they also didn't slot each DIMM in correctly. They clearly didn't do it with the top slot, because there's no way you could jam that in there with the notch the way that it is. But that bottom DIMM is still not slotted in correctly, even though it's oriented correctly. So, like, how many How many mistakes can you make in a single shot here? I just it blows me away. I think it's pretty clear off to the right. You can see they've got some sort of like RGB LED strip, whatever is making this look blue, kind of like a cathode like style light. It looks pretty cool. I mean, it does give it a kind of a unique effect because a lot of PC built, at least to the layman, right? They aren't lit up. They don't look extravagant. They're just kind of vanilla PCs. So I understand why they added the light to this scene. That works. You can see it off to the right though. It's not totally hidden, so it does look a tad bit cheesy. But again, the wiring is something that would take 5 seconds. I mean, even if you're not going to actually have this PC running, which it's very clear that there's no way that it could in the state, you could still move some of the cables out of the way so that it doesn't look so messy. Maybe they wanted the cabling this way so that it looks like it is wired up and doing things, but it's not done cleanly, and so again, it looks disorganized, and it doesn't really rub off well on the character who owns this system. And perhaps the last thing I could pick on in the shot, there might be more. I might be missing more. I have no idea. The fact that there is no graphics card. So this being an AM4 motherboard, it's very likely that it's used a vanilla Ryzen chip, not a G chip, which would have would be an APU essentially, so it would have an IGP in it. Most of the regular, just run-of-the-mill Ryzen CPUs don't have IGPs, which means you would need a discrete graphics card. So even if they did install the CPU and the memory and the cooler correctly, if they left out the graphics card, it's all in vain, right? And another situation where I think they could have definitely spruced up this image is add a graphics card, maybe turned it vertical, right? So in this case, the fans from that shroud would have faced the viewer. That would have looked really cool. Again, to have like a top flow style CPU cooler and then 2 or 3 fans from the graphics card shroud all pointing toward us. It looks like it's doing a lot of cooling because it's working very hard. That scene would have just been chef's kiss, right? But we don't have that here. Instead, we have this disoriented, disgusting mess that has no way of turning on at all. It's not even wired up correctly. It's also pretty funny that this guy has like a triple screen laptop, which I'm sure are just like 2 duct tape pieces of cardboard together. I mean, it looks like the screens are on, but there's probably a bit of green screening going on here. And the case that houses all the components for the build we just saw is from Cooler Master. It looks like one of their half cases. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't worked with it. It's a bit older, but I mean, at least it looks like it's wired up correctly here on the right side. I don't really know for sure what's going on. Some of these cables, like you can see the power cable's obviously connected. We've got a few, I can't tell if that's like a VGA connector or what. It's a really fat connector, so it's not modern. And even so, again, what are they connecting it to? Because the motherboard isn't receiving any power. You can see there's very clearly no CPU cooler in there, no graphics card. So what the heck is it even doing? And to that end, if he already has a laptop with 3 functioning screens, why does he have the desktop there at all? What purpose is it serving? Maybe it's like an optional thing he can like tunnel into for some reason to do the hackery that he's apparently doing. I laughed so hard at this. I love the show. Billions is an awesome show. You should watch it if you haven't already. Again, you can check it out on Showtime. They're not sponsoring any part of this video or anything, but this scene it cracked me up so much. My poor wife, is just sitting on the couch like, are you seriously making a big deal out of this? Like, I took the time to pause this scene because it was so bad. But you have to understand why it's bad. You have to, understand PCs, custom PCs, and what components do, what's missing for it to be funny. And I know most of my audience, of course, you guys watching, are pretty familiar with this stuff. So I just wanted to share it with you because it was such a blunder. And again, I have no idea how on earth they didn't have anyone in the studio who could, okay this and approve it, who had any ounce of knowledge at all about how systems work. Maybe they had folks like that and they're just like, the average person's not going to know. That's fine, but still, I mean, I would take a little too much pride in my job, I think, at that point, and I would want it to be authentic. I'd want it to at least look like a functional build for others in the industry or maybe other just generic viewers watching who might also have some sort of like custom PC inclination. So, yeah. Kind of a miss there. Still a great series, but this scene, I really lost it. But anyway, with that, let me know if you guys enjoyed this one by giving this one a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Let me know in the comment section below what else you saw wrong with this image, and I will catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for laughing with me.